know was that a real flute that the shepherd was playing at the beginning of Act 3?
I wondered if somebody would ask that. He is actually a music student in the academy there. And he was actually playing as if it was the cor anglais.
Yeah.
And he was breathing exactly the same as the guy who was playing it. Yeah. But the guy who was playing it was actually behind the wall. Oh. And so he was sitting there with basically just a piece of wood and just making it look as if he was playing.
The other thing I was really fascinated, what was it like working with Barenboim and Patrice Chéreau?
Oh, it was incredible. I mean, the whole thing came about by accident, in fact. I was at La Scala singing Stäber in Janufa in the April of last year. I went there April the 1st. The week before, they asked me to go and sing to Barenboim because La Scala felt that I should sing Tristan. What I found out eventually was that the tenor who was supposed to sing it, a German, had actually had a problem with his throat, and he ended up with an operation on his vocal cords and everything because he couldn't sing. He'd basically done too much. And so I went along, sang to Barenboim, and he said, right, okay, go away, learn 3 sections of Tristan while you're doing Janufa. I'll come to La Scala and work with you. And then in a session one day, he turned around to La Scala and said, okay, this is my Tristan. And he said, it takes a year to learn the role, if you're quick. He said, Ian has 5 months. So whatever he needs, he has to have. So they took care of my mortgage and everything, and I had to cancel my work and live in Milan and study between 5 and 10 hours every day. And Daniel was there at the end of the phone if he wasn't actually working with me, if I had any questions. 5 days I went to Aix-en-Provence and we worked with Chéreau, just Waltraud and myself. And bearing in mind at that time I spoke no German whatsoever. So most of them either speak fluent German or are German. And Waltraud and myself, we went for 5 days working 6 hours a day only on the text of the duet in Act 2. We spent 30 hours over 5 days discussing the text, trying to work out what it all meant. Now she actually, I was staggered that she was surprised by some of the things that Chéreau was saying, and saying things like, I never thought of it that way. Mm. And she's German. Right. And in fact, she studied the text of Isolde for 4 years before she actually took on a production to sing it. So, I mean, first off, Patrice Chéreau, I mean, I think the first Wagner he did, I think was the Ring Cycle in Bayreuth, 25 years ago. And
I've seen a recording of it.
Yeah, it's remarkable. And he really broke with a number of traditions. And apparently on the opening night, half the audience loved it, half hated it. And they ended up with literally fighting each other in the stalls and climbing over the seats to hit each other. And he's a remarkable guy because he just tries to go for the truth of what's in the text. And he doesn't do things for no reason. And the same with Daniel. I mean, I said to him, look, is there any texts I should read or any essays and things like that? Because I've got to do all this in a short time. He picked up my score and he said, what you need to know is between those 2 covers. He said, if you can do what is between those 2 covers, I'm happy. And so we paid scrupulous attention to the dynamics of everything. Because with Wagner, most people's idea of Wagner is that you go along and listen to some people screaming until they can't scream anymore. And that's actually not what Wagner wrote. So Daniel's been one of the conductors that have actually broken with the old tradition and is actually sort of really concentrating very much on what's in the score. And, you know, I mean, Wagner was heavily influenced by Bellini and composers like that. So, you know, it's kind of, in all sorts of music, whether it be Verdi, Puccini or whatever, there are things that are done traditionally in a certain way. It doesn't mean that because it's traditional, it's actually correct. You know, it's like singing in Calaf in Turandot, the second top C. I never do it, because it's not what Puccini wrote first. He wrote in a top C because a particular tenor wanted to sing one. And again, just because it's tradition just doesn't mean it's correct.
it was interesting what you were saying in the introduction about the fact that after all those hours of rehearsals, the musicians felt that it was unplayable. And to a certain extent, some of that avant-gardeness, although we'll completely understand it now. I mean, I felt it was there, some of it, but it was very daring.
Oh yeah, I mean, in its day, literally, the technique of the instrumentalist wasn't good enough to play it. And when you consider that none of the orchestra at La Scala had ever played it before, because it hadn't been played in La Scala for 28 years. So all of the orchestra there, none of them had ever played it. So he came in, and actually, Daniel, and he said to me after 2 performances, he said, "This is a great Wagner orchestra." And he said, "I didn't think it would be so good." And I have to say, it is very interesting seeing that, because, and listening to what the orchestra did, because in May this year I actually did it, that was in December, December the 7th, the opening season of last year. In May of this year I actually went back with Daniel to, this time Berlin, the Staatsoper, and I did it there. And to hear that orchestra do it as well, there was very, very little difference in fact. And they are used to doing Tristan. You know, it's in their repertoire.
Right. Okay, I've got some more, but are there any questions from the audience?